This episode starts with Shanda's newly programmed life inside the machine, in which he comes to the office to do all his work and receives a call from his mother, which also turned out to be programmed, because emotions are necessary for a brain to work properly and give right solutions to a problem. But there's something off the bridge about his life, as his life follows the same routine every single day again, and most importantly, Shanda doesn't even remember his yesterday. There's only today for him. He seems to be unaware of this terrifying machine setup and thinks about this life to be normal, emotionally supported through his mother's call, while he has been monitored by a geek and his immoral boss Prasad. They are watching each and every single progress and data collection Shanda is making, and the geek is monitoring every action. Prasad asks him to speed up his progress. Meanwhile, a ghost attempts to break through the setup created for Shanda and tries to engage with him, but before it reaches him, the geek stops it and resets his day again. The ghost continues to invade Shanda's life, and finally, it becomes successful in reaching out to him. Shanda becomes terrified, and it seems to be that there's not just one ghost but a group of them who pin him down to the chair and show him a video of his vicious operation. Shanda remembers everything and realizes that he is not alive anymore, and that the group of ghosts are the people from a slum in India that Prasad brutally murdered. At Maddie's house, Maddie is very happy about her father and plays a video game with him daily. David is hiding in the game that is safe for him for now, and Maddie savors her father's presence even if it's just through audio communication. David feels himself worthless for Ellen, who is continuously ignoring him, and out of his anger about this whole situation, he messes with the coding and disturbs the decorum of the game. The disturbance in the game gets noticed by the logarithms, who are trying their best to track him down. Maddie gets worried about his dad getting caught by the system and promises to talk to her mother about it, and David agrees. At the school, Maddie talks to her only friend about it and explains her complex parental drama to her, which she finds quite interesting. Maddie comes up with the idea of setting up a dinner for her mother where her parents could finally talk to each other. Meanwhile, at work, Ellen receives a call from David, but she refuses to attend it, and at the same time, Gabe enters the office and asks her for dinner. Stunned and perplexed, Ellen instantly agrees to dinner at Gabe's place. Meanwhile, Caspian is surfing through the internet, watching Stephen Hallstrom's videos, and digging into more information about the UI. His mother comes to check in to apologize for her recent fight with his father and to clear up any misunderstanding. But as soon as she finds out about Caspian's increasing interest in UI and logarithms, she rushes towards her car in the garage. She calls Pope and gives him an update on his rising curiosity about logarithms, but they seem to be monitoring his every single move and everything he is searching or watching on the computer. Caspian hacks into their bank account transactions history and tracks down their control base site in Norway. But before he could take its screenshot, the satellite images of the location get changed by one of Pope's men. Pope walks out of the office saying that whatever he has learned is going to change tomorrow. The next day, at a grocery shop, Caspian's staged parents decide which hammer they should pick for the stunt they are going to pull tonight. They are preparing to put Caspian in his next phase, where they will implicate a hugely traumatic experience on Caspian. Caspian's mother has a flashback in her mind about her being in an intimate relationship with Steve, while the young Carrie appears to talk to Steve. Back in the present, they carry on their cold and calculated project. At night, they pretend to argue with each other, and despite Carrie refusing to hit Rani with a hammer, she by her own self inflicts pain upon herself with that hammer. This already very disturbing scene becomes more intense when Caspian enters their room to help his mom and starts to punch his father in the face. Afterward, Carrie leaves the place in anger and later in his car informs his boss about successfully reaching the inflection point. Deep down, Carrie is sad about not meeting his son again, but Pope consoles him and appreciates him for his good work. On the other, Renee's arm is bleeding and Caspian takes his injured mother to the hospital and promises to take care of her. At the dinner, Maddie cooked up a delicious meal. She gets the table ready and sets David on a call at one side of the table. Ellen arrives and gets offended by David trying to reach out to her, saying that it's not her husband. Maddie gets into a heated argument with her and mentions Ellen's boyfriend, Gabe. Ellen storms off and goes to Gabe's place. Later, at his place, the two are watching a zombie movie together, and just when they take the first step to being intimate with each other, David infiltrates Gabe's home technology and occupies all of Ellen's attention. Ellen gets frustrated and starts yelling at David, asking him to stop all this. Uncanny feelings start to sink into Gabe, and he investigates Ellen about David, to which Ellen refuses to give him any answer. Gabe gets offended and asks Ellen to get out of his house, and the whole scene looks like a breakup scene. Ellen hurriedly comes back home at midnight and enters Maddie's room to talk to David. Maddie helps her to open the game where she meets David. Ellen talks to David with a VR headset and confronts him about her emotions. She explains to him that after mourning him for 2 years after believing he is no more, she has finally moved on in her life with Gabe, who helped her in her grief and took her back into life. She confesses that she doesn't think him to be real and that she can't be his wife like this. David pauses and pleads his corner, saying he doesn't know what to feel about his new life either, and the thing he knows, and the only thing which keeps him going, is his love for her and Maddie. It softens Ellen's heart and she decides to keep the communication as friends. They keep on talking to each other for hours and make jokes about everything, giving out happy positive vibes. At the conference, Pope exits the conference and finds Prasad on his way. Prasad talks about uploading intelligence and tries to persuade Pope to join hands with him on the technology. Pope seems to be perplexed about this offer and moves on to his own way without giving him an absolute answer. Meanwhile, the ghouls help Shanda to escape the logarithm's fortress. Although the geek tries to switch the system back to normal, it's too late to stop Shanda from escaping, and he successfully escapes through it without getting into notice, leaving his clone behind to act like him. The next episode starts with Prasad arriving in India via his private helicopter and landing on a roof of a tall tower. The billionaire's luxurious tower is fitted with a huge pool where his son is swimming, a lavish indoor with high technology, and a kitchen which looks like a hotel with an army of servants. Prasad has a to-the-point discussion about his son with his wife and goes to take a shower. But things turn around as some paranormal activities start in the tower. The thing behind it is Shanda, who has hacked all the technology of the tower, starting from sending a message to all the workers about taking a leave from work, leaking the petrol, and making the water intensely hot for Prasad in the shower. Prasad gets out and finds his wife complaining about all the stuff being gone. All of a sudden, Shanda's operation video starts to play on the TV, which makes Prasad's wife terrified and she questions Prasad's work. Afterward, Prasad's son gets trapped in the swimming pool, and an explosion separates him from the other family members. Shanda openly declares his war against Prasad and takes his revenge on him by making him suffer. Prasad begs him to spare his family, but Shanda is too lost in his revenge plan to have pity on him, and the fire took all the control over the tower, leaving no victims left behind alive. In the morning, Prasad's tragic death is all over the news and Pope gets shocked after watching it. He calls Waxman to see the disaster on the news and fills him in about his last encounter with Prasad, in which Prasad told him about his successful attempt at creating a UI. But now Pope figures that he failed to handle the technology and lost everything, even his own life in Shanda's vengeful attack. The episode then follows the narrative of Caspian, as he is in the shop with his mother. To protect his mother from further attack by his dad, he decides to buy a gun from the store. Upon concern for their financial situation by his mom, he hands over a hefty check to her which he earned through his hacking skills and assures her to take care of everything. Meanwhile, Carrie enters the secret base of employees and shows no expression of happiness when the other employees cheer him up for being the #1 dad. In his debrief, he explains to others that Caspian won't function well without his father and they might be very close to falling apart. Furthermore, he complains about Renee being unstable and dangerous for Caspian, but they pay no heed to his warnings and ask Renee to carry out her plan. Carrie goes back into his room worried and saddened by the whole situation. At Maddie's house, Maddie wakes up after a nightmare and quickly turns on the game to talk to her father and asks him about his life inside the electronics. David can play video games and chat on the phone, but his electronic nature is still confined to coding. This is reflected in the shape of his office where he spent most of his years working, which resembles the experience Shanda faced, where he spends his days. Maddie is shocked by this unfortunate revelation, but then he is kicked out of the system when Lori suddenly appears out of nowhere, being malicious and the perpetrator inexplicably attacking David. Lori blames David for the current situation because she believes he made a deliberate mistake in his coding. She takes David hostage, but he continues to protest his innocence. David says he can fix Lori, who is rapidly falling apart. She realizes that David cannot leave the facade of this office, and tries to teach him to escape from this cage that logarithms built. Worried about what Lori would do with her father, Maddie asks Caspian for help. At first, Caspian lashes out at Maddie for ghosting him, and after receiving an apology from her, he admits he never really knew who Lori was. Maddie tells Caspian that she needs to find her and that she sent her a message about staying away from him. Afterward, Maddie explains how Caspian is being watched, and tells him that he's being watched by logarithms. Caspian then tells her about their secret base in Norway and asks her about their UI project. Later, he confides in his girlfriend Hannah and tells her that throughout all his life he always feels like his life is not real. Hannah is open to every discussion and supports Caspian in every way she can. Cody shows up at Maddie's house and Ellen is about to pepper spray the intruders. After Maddie calms down the two estranged adults, Cody explains that Lori is missing and she hasn't taken action lately. A flashback shows how Lori's mind became a UI after her accident and being obtained by logarithms, and how she was able to communicate with him after escaping. It's another tale of walking through walls and back to reality. Ellen pursues Cody to shut down the server and stops her from causing any further harm. Cody is about to shut down Lori's server when he receives an important message that David wants to see Maddie. She puts on her haptic vest and enters the virtual world. Maddie hugs her father for the first time in years. David becomes three-dimensional again. He explains that even though he himself is suffering from a similar virus, it is corrupting at an alarming rate. At the secret base, Carrie sneaks out of his room and escapes the place by taking a ride from a truck on the road. Meanwhile, Caspian checks his computer and finds out that it contains the logarithms chip. He quickly tries to call his mom to tell her about this but stops in the middle, checks out his phone, and finds out that his phone also contains the same chip. He rushes towards the clinic where her mom said that she'll be, but after that Caspian doesn't find her there either. He starts to search for her on the road. At a roadside bench, he finds his mother sitting with Hannah. He eavesdrops on them and learns that his mother is just an actor, playing his role, and so does Hannah, as they argue about not telling Renee that Caspian is feeling strange about his life and Hannah should get more answers out of him. Caspian's heart starts racing fast, and his work turns upside down as he realizes that all of his family members and friends are just pawns, working for logarithms. What kind of impact will this leave on Caspian, who is just a teenager, and how will he react? The phrase 0 day is used in computers to refer to a vulnerability that can be exploited by hackers. In the 5th episode of Pantheon, 0 Days, the gang tries to solve a vulnerability that all uploaded intelligence has and that they all share. The episode opens with a bird's eye view of Logarithms' secret base in Norway, which looks like a doomy black cube against a snowy background. Waxman informs Pope about the failed and destroyed Prasad's company, which collapsed suddenly due to Chan's big revenge, resulting in customers rioting and protesting in the streets. Waxman finds out about a missing employee named Shanda, who he suspects to be an uploaded intelligence, and has escaped like David. But the company is afraid and corrupt, and not willing to help Waxman track him down. Meanwhile, Maddie is having a discussion with her father regarding a bug inside David and Lori's programming. A simple reboot will destroy all the uploaded intelligence, so it won't fix this problem. While debating possible courses of action, David begins to have problems and his appearance starts to glitch and disappear. Lori figures out that the logarithms have found out about his location and quickly backs up his memory. It seems that the logarithms have shut down the servers that were keeping both David and Lori wandering in the system. David once again is only able to communicate through emoticons and only remembers the day before. The gang is running out of time, trying to sort out ways to find a cure. After Maddie's suggestion, they decide to buy their own servers and put the user interface inside the house. Caspian meets his girlfriend Hannah, who is sitting at a cafe, Grindhouse, and takes her with him as a hostage. While driving on the highway, he demands all the answers from her. He threatens her by speeding up the car, making Hannah instantly confess the truth about everything. She is an actress hired by a company to befriend Caspian and act along for 3 years, doing a social experiment. They promise to pay her a lot of money for this odd job, and she signed the contract because she needs that money for her mother's treatments. She is fighting cancer. Upon Caspian's further investigation, she confesses that his mother knows everything and she has to report her every detail, otherwise she'll be screwed. Caspian makes a deal with Hannah that she will help him and he won't tell anyone else that he knows it all in return, so she will have all the money. Hannah agrees. At dinner, Renee converses with Caspian, and the two lie to each other and keep up the same old act. She makes an excuse to Caspian and goes out to attend a call. It's Hannah who tells her that Caspian is being a little distant. While Caspian is listening to their conversation, he decides to set up hidden cameras in the house and catches while she is talking to Pope, having an angry conversation about Carrie being the troublemaker as he couldn't even break her arm and she had to do it herself. She grabs her gun and forces Caspian on a trip, apparently using the vacation as a ruse to hunt down Carrie. With David and Lori safe on the servers at Maddie's house, the gang discusses their options. They contemplate hacking into the logarithms again, and Maddie casually mentions her knowledge of their hidden base in Norway. David quickly hacks Pope's phone and then his laptop and downloads all of the company's secret files. Pope is informed of the breach and asks Waxman to track down the enemy servers and erase David and Lori from existence. However, David tricks Waxman's tracking system and avoids detection. David also discovers Shanda, who is one of them. Shanda's mother receives a call from him and tries to politely console him as he tells her that he feels troubled and alone. On the road trip, Renee stops by a gas station and goes out to the station's canteen. Meanwhile, Caspian steals Renee's car and drives away to find Carrie. When he arrives back home, he finds Carrie standing there. He confesses everything to his son and explains the bitter truth about his whole existence. He tells him about Hallstrom, who created the first user interface, but they all came with the same flaw, that a brain decays over time. He spent the rest of his life trying to solve the problem to stop the decaying process of the brain, but unfortunately passed away of cancer before achieving his goal. Hallstrom knew that he could not upload his own intelligence due to the defect, so instead, he created a clone of himself. Caspian is this clone, and this reality leaves him startled for a moment that he doesn't even flinch. Ranny arrives there and shouts at Carrie to get out of their lives, but he turns down her act by telling him that he has already revealed the truth to him and that he deserved to be his own person. Caspian takes sides with Carrie, and while they try to go, Ranny shoots a gun at Carrie, shooting him in the stomach. Caspian quickly carries his father, puts him inside the car, and drives away. David and the others discover that the logarithms don't actually have a cure for the defect, but through hacking they also learn about the clone, believing that a boy named Caspian can be their savior. Caspian was created from one of Hallstrom's genomes and was born only to fix the defect and save the future or uploaded intelligence. Carrie and Renee were hired to hit all the inflection points of Caspian's childhood to reflect the defining moments of Hallstrom and virtually reshape his life to create an exact replica of the man's genius. Caspian is the result of this experiment, and now everything starts to make sense. Maddie doesn't believe at first how can a schoolboy be their savior, but with further explanations she learns of Caspian's vital importance to their future and understands the fact that he is just a clone. David sees things differently and says he is their last hope. After witnessing Renee's horrible encounter with Carrie, Caspian drives off with Carrie bleeding in the back seat. Carrie mentions that Caspian must avoid each and every hospital, otherwise the logarithms will easily find them. It seems that they have no option of trusting a single soul. Carrie explains that he has always believed in the visions of Hallstrom through all of Caspian's life, but he got emotionally attacked by Caspian as he watched him grow up, so he had a change of heart after implementing the final inflection point. Carrie got involved with his fake son so deeply that he lost all interest in the program with time. Unfortunately, he passes out before he can explain more to him. Meanwhile, Lori starts having more regular crashes and loses part of her short-term memory. When time is up, they decide to investigate Shanda and bring Caspian to their cause. They discuss the serious implications of bringing these two unknown figures together, and instead propose increasingly radical possibilities. Cody doesn't think Shanda is the best option to rely on as he has burned down the house and eliminated 4 people. Ellen agrees with Cody that it will also be difficult for Caspian to adapt and help with all these changes. David and Lori mention another alternative. It is the merging of 2 or 3 uploaded minds to create an entirely new consciousness. Before this alternative can get any real analysis, Caspian contacts Maddie through her high school friend Justine to stop it. Caspian has nowhere to turn and turns to Maddie when the 2 storylines finally converge. Ellen asks to get to a specific location where they catch up with him along with Maddie and Cody. Caspian tries to explain the complexities of his situation, but Maddie briefly tells him what they know, making him believe them and allowing them to help Carrie heal. Cody anonymously offers to drive Carrie to the hospital, and Caspian goes home with Ellen and Maddie. Maddie brings Caspian to her room and asks her to talk to David through virtual reality. Caspian gets into a short debate with her and refuses to help them. Maddie gets very upset and runs outside the home. Justin comes over to Maddie to check up on her and says that whatever Maddie will tell her, she will believe her. Meanwhile, Caspian goes through Hallstrom's interviews, all the media files showing all the deals and processes about his family, his birth, and even the contract with his fake girlfriend. Caspian takes time to digest all the changes in his own life, and all the complexities that have arisen so far. Maddie sits down with Caspian to talk about her life and how things have changed. He also tells her about his inner feeling that somehow he has always felt that it's fake. Maddie makes him feel comfortable with her and jokes about Caspian coming out of her robot's womb. Maddie convinces him to talk to David, entering the VR world and talking face to face with him and Lori for the first time. Hallstrom aimed to change the world and give it a better chance, so he cloned himself to make it a reality. But Caspian gets completely overwhelmed by all the pressure. Eventually, he comes up with this idea and starts analyzing the data. He realizes that the glitch is due to a memory problem and suggests interleaving the memory instead of deleting it. Before elaborating, Shanda unceremoniously appears on the scene and opens a portal. This third known UI, Shanda, seems to have turned into a negative personality. He comes off as aggressive and violent, but later tells David and Lori that it's for the Pentagon. David defends himself and says this is his home, not the Pentagon, and it has just been invaded. He plans to create his own world for every user interface and lives alongside other buggy, apparently sinister zombies. Solitary confinement all this time slowly drives Shanda insane. He defends his murderous actions, stating that he had anger problems in the real world which he used to tackle by playing boxing or throwing fists on the wall, and now he has no way of releasing his built-up anger in the cyber world. David questions his ethics because he eliminated Prasad along with his innocent family members. Shanda shows them the footage of his terrific death and then informs them about Prasad's diabolical scheme, in which he used people from the slums who won't be noticed if they went missing, to experiment upon them. Once they inform Shanda of the UI's deadly defect, his negative emotions start to grow and affect him. Furthermore, when David shows him the files about Caspian, he rushes toward Caspian saying how long it will take to solve the problem. It is still a long time before Caspian draws a final conclusion, and it is estimated that it will take another 13 years. As Shanda has no time left, he panics and loses his mind, confessing having passed on his UI skills to all the world's best minds. All the time he spends alone, he figures out that when other user interfaces enter this system, there must be people who know this so that he can live in another free world. He informed global institutions such as NASA, the Kremlin, and the Middle East of this discovery, unwittingly starting an arms race. David is shocked and worried about the future. Shanda says we are gods, but David counters this by adding that we are gods who are about to pass away. Shanda gets into endless arguments with David and Lori. Seeing from the card that the sad end of the entire human race is approaching, Caspian is tired of all these troubles and leaves, telling Maddie that he will try to enjoy the short life left by the human race before it destroys itself. Shanda truly opened Pandora's box with this revelation. Now every major institution in the world has the same irresistible force, and how many more will be the target of this mission? The 7th episode opens differently with the addition of some new characters. Arkady is a famous Russian hacker with a big fat belly who lives a luxurious life and flaunts his deadly talents by assassinating some world leaders from the comfort of their luxurious homes. Arkady used to be a human hacker, but now he is an uploaded intelligence being used by the US government. This new user interface is unstoppable, but even he has limits to his existence due to the flaw in their system. The government agrees that sometimes ignorance is bliss and Arkady can be replaced, but they only use him in an explosive political maneuver. At the grocery market, Ellen and Maddie are buying all the goods they will need at home. While shopping, there's news going on that world leaders are assassinated and the stock market plummets. Maddie and Ellen panic at the coming cataclysm. Meanwhile, Ellen receives a call from David, but Maddie snatches the phone from her mother and talks to her father. She asks her about UI playing all these dangerous tricks, but David has other news for her and Ellen. He tells them that Lori is planning to go public to reveal all the secrets of user interface programs. As the fear of annihilation brings out the worst in these geniuses, David goes out of his way to appease his UI colleagues. Shanda argues with Lori about her plan because he thinks that other UIs will join him, and together they will be able to solve the flaw. David suggests finding another user interface first to help solve the problem. They both fail to persuade Lori to stop going public about it, as telling it to the world will put them at risk as well. David asks Lori to give him 24 hours, and she gives him limited time to address the issue before it becomes public. On their way back to home, David informs Ellen and Maddie about the whole situation and asks a favor from Ellen to bring Waxman into the game. Outside a belly class, Waxman is watching his daughter from the window while Ellen arrives. She asks Waxman to help them build a system that can track other UIs around the world. She warns him that a war is coming and he must choose a side. The next day, Waxman is working in his office, downloading the system to track other UIs and transferring it to his USB. He gets a call to come to the Pope's office immediately. When he enters the office, he finds two men who belong to NASA sitting there as well. These two men have heard about the flaw, and now they've come to logarithms for the solution. Pope tells them that neither Hallstrom nor they have the solution yet, but Pope asks them to track Caspian, who is their ultimate hope. Maddie goes to Cody's place and asks him to persuade Lori to change her decision about being public, but she realizes that Cody doesn't know anything about it. In the middle of recording her confession, Cody arrives, and she pauses for her lover. He tells her that he is going to the Logarithms base in Norway to collect her files, but Lori stays stubborn about her decision. Later, Waxman knocks at David's home, and when Ellen welcomes him, he hands her a memory card with a tracking program on it. Ellen invites him in and shows him the basement, where the whole program is being set up. David asks Maddie if it's Waxman, and upon her confirmation, he refuses to talk to his old friend when the opportunity arises. David invites Lori and Shanda to his place. Lori is furious to see Shanda, but David says that he needs him to run this program. Shanda takes the system information and runs the program. He projects a huge map, displaying information about the other UI's whereabouts and how to track all user interfaces worldwide. Kozlov can be found in Russia, Jispan and Israel, but the Chinese UI has made its way to Palo Alto and seems to be heading straight for it. They suspect that the Chinese UIs are heading for their next target. They locate them and arrive at their workspace and are surprised to know that it's the reign of winter. A portal opens and shows 3 players who enter the workspace and put up their defenses against them. David, Lori, and Shanda try to persuade them to believe in the flaw in their system and that they will soon be replaced by other UIs. The players of Reign of Winter don't believe them, and the result follows a well-crafted battle between good user interfaces and bad user interfaces. They try to warn their enemies again of the next mayhem, which will be their final downfall, but they still don't listen. David uses their own codes against them to stop them from fighting, but Lori is too weak to hold a main player who influences the others as well, resulting in her shooting at others. They all return to David's workspace, and Lori informs the others that she is going out in public and there's no turning back now. Shanda tries to reprimand his colleague, but David intercepts him. These powerful beings are at odds with each other, and nothing good seems to end for everyone involved. Meanwhile, Caspian gets off of a train, and while wandering the streets, he enters a church in search of a simpler life. A good man who is serving the people meets him and offers him a job teaching some young students. Caspian starts doing the service when he tries to teach his students about math. His own particular lesson gives him a moment of insight. He starts to solve the problems of X and Y and gets lost in his calculations, which he has drawn all over the board. His students record his infatuation, and he quickly deletes the footage, but the logarithms find him anyway. The Pope appears at the church and asks for help, pulling up an interesting scene. He asks Caspian to sit with him at the table. Pope understands that his company is considered the villain, but he sincerely wants Caspian to lead him to a brighter future, and therefore he apologizes to him for ruining everything and talks to him about Hallstrom. He gives Caspian complete freedom of action. The teenager warns him that he will regret it, but that doesn't seem to bother him. Cody is probably the last to talk to Lori. Lori admits that he won't be able to recover her and that the old Lori he's rebooting won't even love him. Cody doesn't care and has to try something, but she wants him to stay and listen to her. She explains all her reasons for denying her reprogramming, which Cody understands. Meanwhile, Shanda calls Maddie and warns her about his future plans of eliminating Lori and tells her to ask David to stay out of his way, otherwise his fate will entwine with Lori's. Maddie runs back to her home to save Lori, but it's too late. While Lori is ending her video to share with the world and expose all the secrets, Shanda launches a missile at the Pacific Ocean to destroy all servers of Lori. The last episode opens up with another candidate for UI, a woman who is a former pilot in the Air Force and an astronaut. She feels disconnected from the world all the time and wants to serve for the greater good. She makes a commitment with logarithms to join them despite knowing the flaw, leaving her husband and 2 kids behind. Maddie watches the world crumble around her. Meanwhile, the world descends into chaos as cyber attacks escalate and a third world war looms. Caspian calls Maddie out of nowhere to tell her about his current circumstances. He explains that he'll be heading to Norway to work alongside Pope, to which Maddie reacts angrily. Caspian tries to explain his side of the story by saying that he is done running, and he is going to shut down logarithms, erasing all their research. He asks Maddie to check his account, which has $30 million provided by logarithms, which he has gifted to Maddie for all her help. But Maddie is only interested in saving her father. Caspian plans to rid the world of UIs, which in turn would eliminate David too, and this puts these 2 individuals in different directions. Cody gives Lori a symbolic burial, but he is still angry at Shanda for his attack. He gets agitated and wants to put Lori's plan into action by releasing Lori's confession to the world, but Maddie disagrees. She thinks it could cause further chaos, but Cody gets offended and goes public anyway, appearing on the news later that day. Unfortunately, Cody isn't taken seriously, and it seems that only a few people believe him without any hard evidence to back it up. Ellen leaves the house to help Cody break the news to the world. Maddie and David discuss Cody's striking move while they are playing chess with each other. David admits that Lori did that because she knew about her coming eternal sleep, as does David. He only has 2 years left, and if he turns back to the old methods of contacting her through chat emojis, then maybe 10 to 15 years. He admits that he is only here for his daughter, but sadly, he won't get to see her grow up. Meanwhile, Shanda is up to his new tricks, stealing the world's nuclear codes. After convincing the other UIs to take his side, he heads straight for David's cyber abode to make his final move. Shanda threatens David, giving him a deadline of 10 minutes to hand himself over or a missile will be launched at Sacramento, eliminating his entire family and many others in the process. Shanda knows everything about David, including how he copied the file of Lori's message, and he doesn't want the message to go public. David admits to Maddie that it may have been a bad idea to keep a backup copy, but he just wants to be seen, to leave behind some form of legacy, or his identity. Maddie begs her father to fight back. David tells Maddie that Lori didn't only make a copy, she also set up a program so that the whole world, every single person, and UIs will be able to see her confession video. Caspian is shown around the logarithms base by Pope. He shows him Hallstrom's room and the place where Caspian was born. Every secret member of logarithms comes out of the dark and introduces themselves to Caspian, including his parents. Upon seeing his parents acting like they will protect him, he gets furious and then starts to bark out orders. He immediately fires his parents and tells Pope to leave his shares, break up the company into different parts, and sell it. The others are shocked by Caspian's demands, but Pope follows them blindly and tells him that he'll do whatever he commands. David heads into the video game world, not to give in to Shanda but to fight against him. The UI characters battle against David, fighting in their own ways. Shanda senses David's defeat and freezes his character within the game. He quickly starts the process to launch the missile, but Maddie promptly reawakens David. David then tricks Shanda by duplicating his character and turns the direction of the missile towards the sea, saving thousands of lives. David decides to sacrifice himself and uploads Laurie's file to every device and screen across the entire globe. This act requires him to wield an unimaginable amount of power, causing David's file to be erased from the cyber world. Meanwhile, Maddie witnesses the sacrifice of her father with tears falling down her cheeks. As soon as Laurie's message goes global, the companies start to panic and pull the plug on all their servers containing these UIs. Shanda orders his UI cronies to head for the satellites as their digital world vanishes around them. People protest outside Logarithm's headquarters after discovering this vicious deceit. Waxman comes out into the public, joins hands with Ellen, and admits that it is all true, to which the Pope orders him to be arrested for breaking the protocol. Caspian and the Pope debate the pros and cons of David's scheme. Caspian feels disturbed by the reactions of people and believes that this is the end of it all, but Pope thinks it's only the beginning. UIs will survive this and then thrive as the countries hide their UIs and lie to their people. He tells him that Hallstrom planned for only one UI to control all the other UIs and to be immortal. He offers Caspian a choice to decide which UI has its flaw removed. Caspian's first option is David, but on contacting Maddie, she reveals that he is now gone after releasing Laurie's message. Pope discloses that they have a copy of his file, and Caspian sits on Hallstrom's chair to work on curing the flaw. The episode ends with Ellen returning home from the protests and finding her daughter sobbing. She is heartbroken at David's passing, as is Ellen. She hugs her daughter and tries to comfort her. There seems to be a power outage that shuts down all the internet servers, but their house seems to be the only one in the neighborhood that is still running on full power, and their neighbors start to head over toward their home, looking for answers. Meanwhile, Caspian starts typing at his computer, maybe uploading David's consciousness once again to give him the power of immortality.